Hi friends. Little bit of a nicer setup today, huh?
To identify with the ego.
Today I want to talk about one of my favorite TV shows, The OA. This show really impacted me and really inspired me in many different ways, and if you haven't seen or heard of it, I highly suggest checking it out and watching it because it's a really eye-opening and amazing show. It was also written and co-created by someone I am heavily influenced by, Britt Marling, who is also the lead actress in the show. I found and started watching the OA because of comments that I had received on TikTok of many different people recommending the show to me. So then I started making TikToks as I watched it, sharing all of my deep thoughts, and they got a lot of views, and a lot of people were really interested in hearing what I had to say, which then inspired me to keep sharing my deep thoughts on TikTok and YouTube, and has helped me grow my channels, which is what I've wanted for so many years. So I'm just really grateful that this show inspired me to do so, and also showed me that there are so many people who are just as interested in talking about this kind of stuff as I am. And this is why it just doesn't make sense to me that Netflix canceled the show after its second season. Netflix, why? There are so many people who love this show, and maybe the more that we talk about it, the more inclined they'll be to bring it back. So I'm just gonna keep talking about it because it's one of my favorite shows of all time. Save the OA. Anyways, the point of this video, why I'm making it today, is because I want to share my full series that I made on TikTok, going through each of the episodes of the OA while I watched them, sharing my deep thoughts, and I wanted to put them all into one place so you could see them all here on YouTube. And with that, big spoiler alert ahead, if you're going to keep watching, I do go into specific details from each episode of the show, so if you haven't seen the OA yet, I highly suggest watching the show first, and then when you're done, come back to hear the rest of my thoughts on each of the episodes. And if you have already seen the OA, here are all of my videos talking about each episode and what I think about them. So I just finished the first episode of OA, and I already love it, and there's already things I want to share about it. Full spoilers ahead, and I'm gonna talk fast so I can fit everything in that I want to say. First of all, I love the terminology invisible self and the visible you. I thought that was really cute. So when the main character starts to recall her memories from Russia, it reminds me of my own experience of when I visited Spain for the first time, and I felt as if I found a piece of myself that had been lost. I really related with how hypersensitive the main character was to other people and their energy. That's exactly how I am. I made a lot of notes about her nosebleeds too. I personally always find this recurring theme in TV shows and movies to be super interesting when it comes to psychic abilities. And it's also something that happens to me, so I always feel like it's a direct message to me. I wrote down that I was forgetting to breathe while watching the scene of her underwater at the end. The dream she had of being trapped in an aquarium also reminded me of the movie Delirium, if you've ever seen it. There's so much. Don't mind if I do barge right into the OA side of TikTok. If this specific niche does exist on TikTok, I'm speaking directly to all the other OA fans out there right now because I just started watching this show and I'm already making a ton of weird connections. I'm going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4 specifically right now, so if you haven't seen this show yet, I'm about to ruin it. So third episode, Puri almost escapes, but then she gets hit in the back of the head after seeing the weird edge of the cliff moment, which reminded me of Westworld. And then she wakes up here.
I couldn't feel pain. I couldn't sense time.
At this exact moment, I had a ding moment because this reminded me so much of this short story that I read. It's called I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. If you've never heard of his work, look him up. It's so good. But the short story is about the last 5 surviving humans who are stuck in a computer program after that computer took over humanity. This is part 2 of The OA is making me wonder if I'm living in a simulation. In the short story, I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream, the 5 humans are basically trapped inside of a simulation where they are constantly traumatized over and over again for hundreds of years by the computer that is keeping them there. And it just reminded me of exactly what the doctor is doing to them in that basement. Because he just makes them die over and over again, but they're having such a real experience. The short story also has these little, I don't know even what this is, but there's 7 of them throughout the story. Does anyone know what this means? When I really start to think about it, I'm are they trying to warn us? Is this a warning? In the story, basically the computer had learned to think for itself, but it had no way to be creative, and so it turned all of its creativity into rage and killed the human race. I'm gonna be nice to my technology. Alright, my other OA fans, today let's talk about the 5 movements. Somebody else left me a comment asking if I thought that it was light language, and that was definitely my initial thought when they started to make the sounds and the movements, but I actually don't really know much about light language personally, so that was just kind of a thought that I had. In episode 5 of season 1, they introduce the 5 movements, and they say that they open a tunnel to another dimension, and that dimension represents freedom. I interpreted the 5 movements more as a symbolic metaphor rather than an actual physical representation of how to open a portal. The number 5 itself is symbolic for a lot of things. It's symbolic in the Bible. The number 5 represents the human and also a human's need for inner wisdom. It's also a number of proportion and represents balance. So these are just things that I think about when thinking about the 5 movements. Also, there's 5 of them, and also 5 in Umbrella Academy can jump dimensions. Y'all, I have finished season 1 of the OA, and I am so emotional, I have to talk about it. Seriously, I lost track of how many times I cried. First of all, when I tell you I am crying. 2 episodes later, I think I actually cried harder when BBA traded her $50,000 check to save Steve from the kidnappers. Are you kidding me? I was literally so emotional over that scene. I just already feel so connected to the characters. Every single actor and actress in the show did such an amazing job portraying their character. On top of that, in the same episode, then this happens.
To open another dimension. I know because I am the original angel.
Ooh, are you kidding me? If that were me in that scene, I would have lost it. Even watching, I almost wasn't able to contain my rage. These were my personal favorite moments from part 1. You guys are right. The OA just keeps getting better and better and unlocking more and more things for me. Let's finally talk about season/part 2. The game that is introduced in this season almost solidifies my theory that we're trapped inside of a simulation or some sort of virtual reality. I even wrote down that my ears started to ring when I realized that the OA was still in a lifetime with Hap, or her captor. I've even had this thought since before watching the show, and it's if we were to die in this dimension or this life, we would just wake up in another version of our body in another reality and have to still deal with the same unresolved trauma or issues that were at play before we died. We aren't allowed to ascend, or whatever you want to say, until we face and handle these situations and relationships. This was my favorite moment from the first episode.
Maker is teaching you a new language, how to escape the limits of your own thinking and see things you didn't know were there.
Sounds like God.
Except it's real.
It seems that we truly have created our own little side of TikTok, so if you guys don't mind, I'm going to keep using your comments to get the algorithm to send this out to all the people who want to talk about the OA, because let's bring it back, please. If you haven't seen it, the OA is a Netflix series, and I'm going to be talking about season 2, episode 2, so if you haven't seen it yet, spoiler alert. This episode introduces the company Curie, which is analyzing people's dreams because they are all having repeating patterns and they're all having similar connections and symbols inside of their dreams. And in the show, the whole study was triggered because all of these patients were having precognitive dreams that ended up predicting a war. I personally feel like there's a lot of truth to this. I mean, I'm on a side of TikTok where people are literally meeting each other in their dreams. So, important message to remember. Dreams are always more than just dreams. Also, this was my favorite scene from the episode for personal reasons.
There's a seed inside every brain.
Yes, these are my thoughts exactly. Wouldn't it be great? So TikTok, just do me a favor and keep putting me on the For You page of all the OA fans. Thank you. Anyways, I've been talking about my theories in order, so I'm going to talk about season 2, episode 3, specifically this scene.
She'll joins us, she'll be able to leave a message on the plate, which I will then interpret for the...
And if you've already seen this episode, you already know that that is not what happens. Instead, she's leaving a message from inside of the TV by showing them different images and sounds. And we already know that they're communicating with Rachel, who died really suddenly and traumatically in the previous episode. And this is the first thing she tells them.
You're going through something. What the fuck?
She's blind.
My theory here is that she is unaware that she's dead and therefore trapped on the astral plane. This can be seen in a ton of other TV shows and movies too, so if you want a part 2. Okay, part 2 on communicating through the astral plane to other dimensions. I related it back to Stranger Things because Will is able to communicate from the upside down through the lights, and then also because this is how I'm picturing Rachel right now in this moment. I also made a ton of connections to the movie The Ring, and if you've ever seen it, you can probably see like where I'm coming from with some of the similarities in the elements. In The Ring and Poltergeist, the TV acts as a portal, and in the OA, the mirror was like what the portal was. And I wrote down when they broke the mirror in the OA, oh, that's 7 years of bad luck. Similarly, if you watch the video in The Ring, you die in 7 days. But I was curious where this superstition of 7 years even came from, because 7 is a number that's seen in the OA sometimes, and so I looked it up. It comes from ancient Roman lore stating that every 7 years life would renew itself, and if a mirror smashed and your image was the final thing reflected, you'd have to endure 7 long years of misfortune before the curse ended and good luck was renewed. How are our dreams connected to this simulation that we call reality? If you're seeing me on your For You page, I am hoping that you're already a fan of the OA. If you aren't, it's a Netflix series. I highly suggest it. I have a series here on TikTok where I'm talking about my theories, and today I want to talk about this character in particular.
I am Asia.
Okay, this scene was pretty intense. Let's break it down. First, I'm going to start with his name. Okay, so the name itself is the same as the angel of death in certain religions. This 11th century poet/philosopher was said to have been visited in his dreams by the angel of death and was warned about his death before it happened. But when Nina calls him Old Night, this is immediately who I think of. It was mostly the tentacles, but this is Cthulhu, the Lord of Dreams. He is part of the Lovecraftian myths, but he's also said to be the intermediary between the human mind and the Great Old One, and transmits messages of the unconscious through our dreams. All of this just leaves me with the question, here's a little story about how a TV show started to affect me in real life. So I'm already on like a spiritual side of TikTok, and everyone was recommending this Netflix series called The OA. I had never seen it, and then once I started watching it, I started to post my theories on it right away because I got sucked in. It's such an amazing show. Go watch it if you haven't. So I got to season 2, episode 5, and this is where they find the house that's actually a puzzle, and it'll trap people who are not worthy, and then those who are worthy can get out of this puzzle house and reach a revelation. The puzzle house reminded me of this book that I've had for like 5 or 6 years. It's kind of hard to get through, hence why it's taking me so long to post, because it's written like a labyrinth, because it's about a family who buys a house and they discover that a closet in their house opens up to the abyss. It's the void, and it's like a labyrinth inside their home. The reason why it's so weird is it's debated if this book is even fiction, and it also came into my life very strangely. So I'm seeing a lot of comments of people who are haunted by House of Leaves. I totally understand. I also got a ton of comments about people who are having reoccurring dreams of houses that are similar to this. If you have not seen the OA and you don't want it spoiled, I'm about to play a clip from season 2, episode 5, but this is why I had to pick up this book and finish it.
That the engineer based the design of the house on his wife's nightly dreams.
The engineer began to want to solve the puzzle himself, from beginning to end. His wife advised against it.
From her monthly meeting to find her husband had collapsed in the attic, the rose window hanging wide open. She, of course, she saw only the view from Nob Hill on the other side of the window, for she had walked through the house as a house. She had not ascended through the puzzle to reach the attic. She suspected, however, that her husband had, and he was now lost to whatever he had seen on the other side of the rose window. And the world could revive the engineer from his coma.
I definitely have my own theory, but I don't want to spoil the end of the show if you haven't seen it. Gonna connect House of Leaves to the OA one more time. For anyone who's already seen it, this is from season 2, episode 6. Something I literally had to write down. This is the scene where they're debating where the OA story took place in their reality.
OA said that when Homer told her about his NDE, he described like a sterile space. A suspended bridge, out the window, foghorns. He kept hearing the name Dr. Roberts, and so I thought, what if Homer was in a hospital? Right? See if it's a real space.
Even if it were a real space here, would it matter? She's in another dimension.
So I always take like stream of consciousness notes when I watch TV shows, and this is what I have written down at that scene. Spaces. Dimensions exist through spaces. It's how they're connected. And then I wrote in all caps, find the rooms inside your mind. I feel like I got that from something, but I don't know what it was, but I definitely feel like the house represents like finding rooms in your mind, opening your mind to new things. Welcome back to the OA side of TikTok. It's been a minute, but I'm gonna keep talking about this show until they bring it back. I haven't talked yet about my theories about the end of the show, so let's talk about that. Spoilers ahead if you have not finished the OA. Specifically, I want to talk about Hap and his relationship with the other characters. Like, this man is really starting to think that he's untouchable. Look at this scene from episode 7, season 2.
Accuse me of anything you want. I mean, you have a history of mental illness in this dimension, so I don't know how well that would go. But go ahead and try.
He's basically saying that he can get away with murder because the only people who know that he did commit murder are mentally ill, and so they won't be believed. On top of that, Hap is also using Homer's unawareness of his previous self to his advantage, and he is blurring the lines of reality in his head to confuse him further. In a symbolic way, he's like the devil, planting literal seeds of deceit in their heads. Okay, I've been posting a lot of videos about the Netflix series, The OA, because I really love the show so much, and I've seen so many comments of people who are sad that it was canceled, but this is the energy you need to have. Netflix, bring it back. No cancellation is permanent, right? Like, if there is enough interest to bring a show back, wouldn't you want to continue it? We all want the show to continue. Netflix, are you listening? Your fans want the OA to continue. I believe we can bring it back. Can we please talk about it until they do?